Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Promethean, the rebel angel of rationality and reason. Now, not to beat a dead horse, as the popular cliche goes, but there's been more news arising around the InCel phenomenon. And something just came across my Twitter feed that was so fucking ridiculous that I have to post another video about this. The former CEO of Reddit, Ellen K. Powell, tweeted, "CEOs of big tech companies, you almost certainly have incels as employees. What are you going to do about it?" Is that a threat?
No. I'm pretty sure it was just a question. Also, incels are not a phenomenon. They are a community with an ideological attachment and have been for a long time, having not only sought one another out, but actually developed their own language in a fashion scene with other subcultures. The very word incel itself, being comprised of the terms involuntary and celibate, carries with it ideological weight as with any other term used as an identifier. Incels are not to be confused with normal people who are going through a dry spell. Incel solely refers to a group of men who, for a variety of reasons, most often related to their lack of character integrity, find it impossible to locate someone who can tolerate them long enough to have sex with them. Now, rather than taking time out to reflect on this, common incel response involves racist or homophobic tirades, but the one thing unifying them is their misogyny. Incels share this belief that they are being robbed by women in said women not wanting to have sex with them. Incels will often reduce sex down to a quantifiable resource, which they will often talk about redistributing. The problem is that said redistribution goes by another word in any normal community, and that word is rape. Now, for years, incels have been boiling over on the internet, forming many of the foot soldiers for online movements such as Gamergate, whose entire purpose was to harass women developers and journalists under the pretense of seeking ethics in games journalism, an argument so flaky no amount of pseudo-cream can save it. But on top of all of this, a few particular individuals have bought into the incel narrative to such a degree that they have become radicalized. The result of which has been the deaths of many people, including 7 people in the 2014 Iso Vista and, more recently, 10 people and 15 injured in Toronto, Canada. Both killers involved with these events were incels, and said beliefs inform their actions. Now, I'm having to explain all of this as said context is important for the conversation, including the question asked by Powell and how trademark skeptic Promethean is going to attempt to reframe said question.
What is that supposed to mean, Miss Powell? What is that supposed to mean? Are you seriously considering and telling the public that we should punish men for being sexually frustrated and not being able to get laid?
Okay, trademark skeptic. Here's what should be a relatively easy one for you. Point to where Powell told anyone to do anything in her original tweet. About the closest one could argue Powell was demanding anything of anyone would be in the basic expectation of an answer to a question, but even then, I get the feeling that this was more rhetorical just to inform tech companies that maybe they should be looking into the issue. But isn't it funny how you've taken a genuine question and, through literary alchemy, turned it into, quote, telling the public? Also, as already noted, the premise that incels are just a group of people who can't get laid is disingenuous. This is perhaps the easiest to expose since incels are almost entirely exclusion to LGBT+ folk, whilst excluding women as a central ideology. There are women going through dry spouts as well, yet they're not incels, just like there are men going through dry spells and the vast majority of them, thankfully, are not caught up in this little rape cult of yours. Since the question specifically premises itself on the ideology of the incels being discussed, attempts to link this to non-incels that may share some quality with incels is simply a dishonest ploy. All you have done is ignore the very specific label Powell used and created a straw man in which said question is broadened to a group not included in Powell's original question. This is completely underhanded.
What? And it's not a joke. It is not a parody. This woman apparently is being serious. Now, she could be suggesting that girlfriends paid for by companies to date employees, or you could just install prostitutes to give blowjobs in the break room. But I don't think that's what she really means. Considering the current feminist trends of villainizing basically everything about men.
Shit. If you're going to cry about the imagined slights against men and how they're apparently being villainized, maybe don't fucking do it while showing a picture of a woman with red glowing eyes in the background. Like, haven't you ever wondered where the term demonizing came from? So on one hand, it's okay to demonize a woman asking a very genuine question following another incel terrorist attack, whilst asking questions about a community centered around rape as a solution to their self-inflicted problems is taking things too far, villainizing them. I'm sorry, but your priorities are pretty fucked up. Either way, you owe me a new hypocrisy meter, as mine just busted there with your little display.
No, she probably means fire or make unemployable men who either can't get laid, or what I think is more likely, men who express frustration and emotional upset at not being able to find sex. Every single lawyer in the entire country has to have collectively cringed at this tweet. There is no way that employers would be able to screen their employees or in any way interrogate and ask them either about their sex lives or about their feelings towards women. That is just so fucking preposterous.
And you're completely right, which is why this isn't even on the table. The question solely asks what such companies plan to do about the InCel problem. Stop trying to pretend that InCel is nothing more than people not having sex. It's a very specific online community with a very specific ideology. Normal people don't gather online and talk about the violent things they wish they could do to women, as well as the norms and the chads. Examples of the before-mentioned terminology that highlights that this is a subculture. Normal people get on with life.
Now, true, the employer can punish men when they actually act on this sexual frustration and, sexually assault women in the workplace, which really is kind of the root of all this. But making men who are sexless and miserable already, making their lives even worse, is absolutely counterintuitive. It is almost as if feminists actually want an incel death squad to shoot up and bomb everyone on the planet. As a matter of fact, I think more incel shootings actually do serve the interests of feminists being on the left and being anti-gun, because if there's more incel shootings and more gun massacres, well then that just reinforces the need for gun confiscation and anti-gun laws now, doesn't it?
Oh boy, it seems like we're going off the deep end into the world of Alex Jones. That's another common thing within the incel community. The desire to latch onto conspiracy theories as a way to suggest a position has more legitimacy than it actually does, because today's big bad is wanting all this to further their goals, and I, trademark skeptic of YouTube, am here to show you the truth. Then again, blaming toxic masculinity on feminism is hardly something new. We have that every single time a so-called MRA brings up suicide, before then using ableist slurs to stigmatize people with disabilities and people in need of support. So am I really surprised? Not really.
When will women and society finally stop punishing men for either being sexually frustrated or attempting to find sex?
Well, to stop doing it, they'd have to, first of all, be doing it. I'm guessing the whole attempting to find sex is a jab at the recent Me Too movement, which has brought the layers upon layers of inappropriate conduct, which, whilst their layers exist to varying degrees of horrendousness, each accumulate to form rape culture. The entire basis for criticism of the Me Too movement seems to boil down to, if I can't sexually harass someone, then how can I have sex? To which the response is, never. Please don't become involved with an act that could actually result in procreation. Our species already has enough to deal with in Donald Trump. Don't do this to us. Please, we're begging you. But in all seriousness, If you think sexual harassment is equal to dating, maybe I found the reason you can't get a date.
Now, to feminists and the left, the word incel doesn't mean what everyone else who even knows about it, and particularly me, what it means to me. It doesn't mean to them what it means to me. To feminists on the left, when they hear the word incel, they are so retarded that they conflate the word incel, the movement, men who are sexually frustrated, with just all men who are anti-feminists. They're on the right, they're men's rights activists, or they're just men going their own way, or they're pickup artists, or incel. They just lump that entire group together. They think we're all the same exact thing. For the left, the word incel appears to be shorthand for just about any misogynistic ideology. Well, misogynistic in quotes, anti-gynocentric, any ideas that assign to women some agency of responsibility, that go so far as to criticize female behavior. The word incel has more ideological connotations than simply men who just can't get laid.
Meanwhile, as demonstrated at the start of the video, that's not true. Whilst I note incels do form part of these communities, I also acknowledge that there are segments to the MRA, alt-right and Gamergate communities that are not incels. Incels refers to a very specific segment which share a very specific ideology centered around a single core premise that women owe them sex. Now, the way this notion manifests itself is always misogynist, as well as often homophobic in relation to lesbians, and I'm gonna hazard a guess, transphobic in relation to trans men, not to mention racist, because very often it links to they're coming over here to take our women, and yet there are some other common themes. Pickup artists are a big part of the incel community, being the snake oil a few conmen came along and created to sell to said incels. Yet, as a good conman does, they seem to actually give incels terrible advice, but present it as genuine advice, the result being that said incels will remain a captive market to said conmen. Pickup artists never sell a solution, they sell the promise of a solution. But just because all incels are inherently misogynist due to their intrinsic belief that women's bodies are owed to them in some fashion, does not then mean that all misogyny is sourced from incels. And nobody, as far as I can tell, certainly not Power and Her Tweet, certainly not the feminist communities I belong to, has believed this to be the case. Now, some of the general papers seem to hold this notion that all toxic masculinity can just be blamed on incels, but all the specialist pieces I have read on the matter have been careful to remind us that these are just a part of the patriarchal system.
So I would doubt that feminists actually want to punish men who are unable to get laid. It's just that they know that these sexually frustrated men, they think that these sexually frustrated men are more likely to make sexual advances on women, and feminists, being puritanical as they are, yet paradoxically also sluttish, that's a paradox I haven't been able to reconcile. Women are preaching for sexual liberation. They constantly advocate women's rights to just have sex with everyone they want, and yet women don't actually have sex with everyone. They're only having sex with the top 10 or 15% alpha males. Women still are utterly prudish in their sexual behavior instead of, if there really were sexual liberation, then incels wouldn't exist if feminists actually preached sexual liberation, if the slut walks were actually filled with real sluts.
By Sagan, the incredulity hurts the mind. There is no paradox besides the one your strawman version of feminism creates. What society has termed a slut has changed over time from being a female sex worker to a confidently unorganized woman, and of course, a promiscuous woman. But at the heart of each iteration has been a woman not bent to society's demands, a person expressing their full autonomy, so we can understand why said term has an attraction to be reappropriated. But as for your extraordinary incredulity as to why, if a woman has full autonomy, including over their sexual prowess, why there would be men who can't get laid, I still can't believe I'm having to explain this. A woman having full bodily autonomy to do what they like with said body does not then mean they would want to have sex with you. Hell, a woman can enjoy sex the same way I enjoy fresh cinnamon buns and want one after another. That still wouldn't mean that they want to have sex with you. Double hell, a sex worker whose very job is, as the title says, sex, still wouldn't have to have sex with you even if you were standing in front of them with money in hand. Sex workers, just as with every other human on this planet, can withhold consent, hence I describe your little community as a rape cult, since this is the one fact you refuse to acknowledge. Let me demonstrate this principle to you in a way you may understand. I have a solution to the incel problem. Incels can all fuck each other. We'll take a list, we'll organise local conferences at hotels, we'll let the hotels know you're coming so they can put down the tarpaulins for when you're later coming, and I know what the response to the suggestion will be. You're going to cry about the fact that you're not homosexual and that you could never have sex with another man. If so, then I ask you to take that objection and apply it to all the women who, even though they're becoming more sexually liberated, still don't want to have sex with you. If you believe that you're owed sex to the point that someone should give up their right to choose each aspect of their partner's person, the logical solution is to make that person you. You give up your preferences if you are desperate.
I mean, frankly, to me, I think the world could use more sluts. I mean, if sexual frustration among males is this large of a problem that men are starting to kill random people who have nothing to do with it just because they hate life so much, just because they can't get laid. Maybe women should be a little more receptive. Maybe, there should be less incentives for women to not have sex, to women to just not have relationships. Just women to become single mothers and feed from the taxation and subsidization of the state in the form of welfare checks and food stamps, keep single mothers alive. If the government just revoked virtually every penny of subsidy from single moms, single motherhood would just vanish overnight. These women would suddenly they would want to be married so much more.
There goes another fucking meter, and this time I'm going to have to get a little more serious, because in crying about POW apparently calling for action when all they actually did was ask a very genuine question, you have just called for the government to enact sanctions to financially cripple an entire demographic to, in your mind, effectively force them to get married, and since you're seemingly forwarding the idea that sex under marriage is a given, force them to have sex they otherwise would not have. This is rape through extortion. It's no different to starving someone and offering them food on the basis that they sexually please you. Wait, no, I'm wrong. It's like starving someone and their fucking children and offering them food on the basis that they sexually please you. This channel has just marked itself as one forwarding rape. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting support for incels without the overt support for rape. But no, we got the whole picture of what an incel is here with this shit face, and it is a fucking disgrace on humanity as a whole, unquestionably. If anyone still doubts the dangers of incels after this, then I'm sorry. You have no right to ever discuss any topic of ethics ever, period. To threaten to starve single mothers and their children, to effectively force them to have sex, to force them into a situation of rape. That's shit you hear about from pirates and from warring nations. And this person is forwarding it in society, apparently civil fucking society, and I have to question the civil because of people like this living in it. Are we really that civil, or are we just lying to ourselves at this point?
The problem is, if this insane proposal, which won't go anywhere, it won't go anywhere in this world at all, to any degree were to be affected, if men were to actually somehow be punished simply for being unattractive, or for at least expressing sexual frustration, or dare say approaching a woman, and if he's not good at doing that, that's the difference, is it's not a crime these days to actually not necessarily propose sex to women, but to make sexual advances on women. It's only if you're bad at it. It's only if you're clumsy and stupid and say the wrong thing. If you reveal your intentions too much, if you're a creep. And generally, if you look unattractive. If you are unattractive, society punishes you and calls that sexual assault, okay? But if you're Orlando Bloom, Brad Pitt, or if you're just generally a Chad, if you're a good-looking guy, or at least medium, if you can handle women the right way, without either being a douche or a creep, you're actually rewarded by society. But it's not a moral issue of, sexual assault women, because one man saying the exact same thing could get him laid, and a different man who's less attractive could say the exact same thing, but get in trouble instead. It's just a terrible idea, taking a group of men who feel marginalized by society, then, because a subset of them are, they actually are toxic, they actually dwell on their inability to get laid so much that they literally do hate women, they treat them and isolate them as a social disease. Yeah, that's just not going to make the problem worse at all.
At this point, what do I say? You yourself, as an incel, have forwarded rape through extortion as a valid way to tackle the self-inflicted sexual frustration you feel, even if only casually or as an on-the-spot example. You show us the full deal in how this is not about men not being able to get laid. The issue is about men taking the fact that they can't get laid, failing to do some damn self-reflection, and instead preaching rape through various means as a way to redistribute sex. It's fucking sick. You are sick, and your sickness either needs to be treated or cut out. We do not bow to the whims of wannabe rapist, which is all an incel really is. And that crap about sexual harassment is only doing what a hot guy, aka Chad, does whilst ugly, just needs to fucking die. Sexual harassment is called out regardless of the perceived hotness of a guy. Most approaches don't end with accusations of sexual harassment. If all of yours have, then I know your problem. You're fucking doing it wrong, and by that I mean violating the security of another human being. Look, I could note how I see issues in Powell's suggestion that incels exist within the tech communities, not because I doubt it, but because I feel it gives other fields of employment an excuse to ignore a genuine problem that exists within their communities as well. But that issue is so fucking minor compared to the problem of the incel community and its ideology, including that which you have demonstrated here, that it doesn't merit more than a passing mention as a rebuke to your garbage issue. Though I want to take a moment to focus the rage I have toiling away inside me towards the general media for a second. First of all, get your shit together. Stop using incels as an excuse to just dump all the recent misogyny at their feet. There are more communities like them, and if you actually wanted to do something, you look into doing exposés of them as well. Second, where the hell has this sudden moral outrage been for the past 50 years surrounding abortion? Many of the media outlets talking about how disgraceful the incels' demands to a woman's body in the form of rape are, have failed to realise that this shares the exact same vein of principle as the anti-abortion crowd. All of it is about the commodification of people with wombs as a civil resource that strips said people of their bodily autonomy. Anti-abortion activists share a lot of the same rhetoric as well. Many of the most recent anti-abortion pushers coming on the grounds of racism and the fears of racial replacement. And yet when I discuss said topic with the anger it deserves, people act as if that's strange because the general media has pretended for far too long that the anti-abortion stance is anything but the horrific breach of human rights it actually is. And if you're one of those people, shame on you. It's sick whether you want to strip away a person's bodily autonomy for a non-sentient fetus or the rape desires of an incel. Fuck you all. Yeah, I'm a little hacked off. Not only am I a fucking rape survivor, but for a time my mum raised myself and my brother on her own. This fucker, in this video, would have starved us as children so he could rape her. Now at the end of my videos, I call for people to respond with a reasonable degree of respect, not some inhuman quality. And I think this has just demonstrated to us where rage is completely justified, so have at it. Hi there, I just want to say a few things here at the end of the video before you go. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, John Schoenrock, Alexander Williams, and Daniel Martinez. Your support has ensured this channel's ability to grow over the years, and for that we are truly thankful. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe and follow Essence Fort on Facebook and Twitter. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, an organisation dedicated to helping atheists around the globe. Do note, any comments utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity or ability, both mental and physical, will be removed immediately and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. Let's keep this space one which upholds the humanist values. Thank you for watching.